Welcome back to another episode of Seminoles Sideline 365. We're doing our weekly preview show coming off the big win at home against LSU. Big victory for this program. Biggest victory in Mike Norvell's career at FSU. So we're excited to move on. Obviously, you have to move on. You have to get to the next win. Get the next opponent on focus. And I'm sure Mike Norvell has told the team that in the locker room. That's one step at a time, one win at a time. And you can't look ahead towards Clemson. You got to look ahead towards who's in front of you, which is Southern Miss, and we'll be welcoming them. I believe the game's at 8:30 in Tallahassee at night, so that'll be good. Hopefully, we'll get a. I heard they sold out almost 10,000 tickets, sold 10,000 tickets, or 10,000 requests for student tickets within the first half hour of those going live. So that's great to see, and hopefully we'll have a full house there in Tallahassee. So getting excited for that, and we will have a special guest here by the name of Garrett Busby. He'll be joining us to give us an inside look at what we should expect from the Golden Eagles and their program, because they got off to a hot start as well, going 1-0, and they have a lot of talent on that program. So we're excited to have him, and we'll bring him in on in a couple of moments here. But old man, what is going on in your mind at the moment, and what do you have any final thoughts going out of that LSU game before we get on to the next opponent?
No, I thought, I was concerned in the first half of the game. I was really concerned because LSU had left points on the field. They could have been up 2 more touchdowns, really, let's say conservatively 10 points at halftime, more than the 3 points they were up. Sure. So I was happy with that outcome. I thought that is some of the best defense, goal line defense, short yardage defense that I had seen in Florida State in many, many years. Okay. Yep. So that was absolutely fantastic. The dominance in the second half just devastated LSU. I mean, it looked like they even quit. And I've watched some film, some of the other shows, the LSU shows, and their fans were saying, and they're insiders or outsiders, whatever you want to call yourselves, they even said it looked like they quit in that third quarter and fourth quarter because we were bullying them. We were probably the most physical Florida State team that I've seen in a long, long time. And it was good to see, from the offensive guys lowering shoulders to the defensive guys being aggressive. So overall, what a great night for this program. Great night for the coaching staff. Great night for the players and all the hard work they've put in. So it sets up to be now, when you're talking about playoffs, there was a guy, remember the guy, playoffs, yes. Remember the new, I forget what his name was, but this is a nationally rated game. It's going to have impact on the committee because we beat a higher ranked team. Even though it's week 1, we beat a higher ranked team on a big night with big crowds and big events, and it's going to count. And we did it making a statement. And
I think that was the biggest thing to your point, was that they finished that game out strong. Well, aside from the touchdown at the end on the defensive end with some reserves, but offensively, Mike Norvell, he didn't let up. He wanted to score that last touchdown. He kept running the ball. You rolled out Jordan Travis. He wanted to make a statement with that game. He didn't put Tater Rodemaker in when they were up 21 plus points. I think he wanted to make a statement to Brian Kelly, to LSU, to the playoff committee, that we are here to play, and we're going to make a statement on the national stage and the 9.5 million people who were watching last night. So to your point, that is it. And I think they have to do that with every opponent they play this year, whether they're out of conference, in conference, no matter the caliber. So like we said before, we're going to have a special guest on. I'm going to enter him into the chat right now. Garrett, how's it going today, Garrett?
Doing well, guys. Thank you for having me on. I'm ready to break this thing down with y'all.
Awesome. Well, Garrett joins us from WLBT. He's a digital content producer over there covering the Mississippi sports. So we knew, I don't know a lot about Mississippi sports, so we thought Garrett would be the perfect guy to tell us about this. So Garrett, this is both teams are coming in 1-0 to this matchup. We're excited about that. Y'all got one of the top running backs in the country in Frank Gore Jr., which I think, if Florida State fans don't know about that, I think what surprised me most about it is I kind of forgot. I assume in the day and age of the transfer portal, keeping a guy like Frank Gore Jr., who went over 1,100 yards last year, his final game, the bowl game, what do you have? Over 300 yards rushing alone. Allowing Southern Miss to keep a guy like that, keep him, and not have a bigger team steal him, so to speak, is impressive. So I want to start there, if you don't mind, Garrett. How did this coaching staff, or how did they retain a talent like that within the Southern Miss program?
Yeah, it's definitely a very interesting topic, and he's not the only one they had a hard time keeping. Mm-hmm. Will Hall revealed last week, I think it was, that a couple teams were illegally tapping him, trying to get him to transfer out of Southern Miss, which would have been, in his eyes, I guess, just like not thinking about the Southern Miss program itself. Like, that's a big opportunity for him because, like you said, he is a really good running back. He's probably a top 10 running back in the country, I would say, regardless of conference and competition. And he proved that last year on the national stage, the Lending Tree Bowl, like you mentioned. So, and I think just the big thing for him, he has such a good relationship with Coach Hall, and he's been at Southern Miss for a couple years now, and they haven't been good for a while. They've been struggling, and they were on scholarship limitations when Will Hall got there, but he decided to stay. He decided to go through the thick of it, and now Southern Miss has built like a family atmosphere that he's felt really connected to, and that relationship with Coach Hall alone has played a big factor in that. And they've kind of built that thing from the ground up. Like I said, they were on scholarship limitations, and Will Hall talked about last year after they got a couple really good wins. He had to start fresh, and he had to do it the right way, and he has done it the right way, putting back that program. Mm-hmm. He said a lot that they had to learn how to win last year, and now they feel like they're on a steady foot, they're on a steady foundation, and they're ready to kick this thing off. And I think Frank Gore Jr. just wanted to be a part of that, honestly.
Absolutely. No, that's a great point. And I did see some of the articles about there may have been some illegal tampering, because with a kid like that, some schools are going after him. But kudos to the coaching staff, kudos to him for wanting to be, to stick with the program and be there through the building process. Like you said, when Will Hall inherited the program, I think it was 2 wins they're going off of. He gets 3 wins his first season. Then last season, y'all get 7 wins. So it's been a quick rebuilding process, so to speak. We've gone through the same things with Mike Norvell, going from 3 wins to 5 wins, 10 wins last season, and hopefully more this year. So it's great to see that progression, see kids stick around. Now, Southern Miss has used the portal. We've seen that. I think you guys had 15 maybe transfers the year before, 11, I believe, or 8, 11 the previous year, 8 this past year. So not as big as, say, Texas State, I believe, who've had like 30 plus in the
I believe they had like 43 or something like that. That's really ridiculous.
So not a huge turnover like that, but like you said, it seems like they brought the right kids in, or building it back the right way. One of those guys that we'll see on Saturday will be a star is Billy Wiles. What do you, the quarterback there from Clemson, what do you have to say about him, and what should Florida State fans know about what he brings to the table?
Wow, yeah. So Billy Wiles, he's completely transformed that offense. I talked to Coach Hall last week about just having a steady quarterback in the program, because his first 2 years there was just the quarterback play just wasn't where it needed to be at the FBS D1 level. Yeah. And he recruited – actually, fun fact about that, he recruited Billy Wiles back when he was in at Tulane, the offensive coordinator at Tulane. Mm-hmm. So he's had established that relationship with Billy for a long time now. So that made that decision a lot easier for him to come to Southern Miss, because he had such a great relationship with Coach Hall. Mm-hmm. And that seems to be a common theme with these players. And I asked him about being able to open the playbook finally, because like you said, y'all didn't watch Southern Miss much last year, but a lot of the times it was just making sure they don't make mistakes and giving the defense good field position to be able to have an opportunity to get points on the board, because the offensive play outside of Frank Gore Jr. just hasn't been there. Sure. From the quarterback position. So Billy Wiles, he brings a lot of stability to the offense. Southern Miss got a glimpse of that last weekend against Alcorn State, in an in-state team at the FCS level. They play in the SWAC. A very good team. and they got to see some passes being thrown around. I believe Billy Wiles, and that's crazy to say in this modern age of football, but I think Billy Wiles ended up throwing 29, maybe 30-plus passes, completed 22 of them.
Yeah.
Very accurate with the ball. The one thing I was disappointed not to see, and maybe this was just the game plan, was the deep ball. Didn't see the deep ball as much as I wanted. It wasn't executed. I don't remember a deep ball being executed watching that game. But the playbook's wide open. And that all that does is free up Frank Gore Jr. to get as many carries and get as many yards down the field as he wants. So that's what Billy Wiles brings. He brings that factor on offense that Southern Miss hasn't had since Will Hall's been there. It's just such a refreshing sight to see, just to have somebody that Will Hall trusts in and that the team trusts in to be able to make the right plays. Maybe they're not, like I said, the downfield plays, but maybe they're just the efficient 5, 10, 15-yarders that we didn't see last year and the year before. But now that's being executed, and Will Hall told me, he's having fun again and calling plays. So
that's always nice to have a tool that allows you to open up the playbook. So a fun fact about him, I don't know if you know this, old man, but Billy actually played at Stonebridge High School. He's from my hometown, or our hometown of Ashburn, Virginia. He played at Stonebridge, which is a powerhouse.
It was a powerhouse.
And it still is in Virginia. Wow. Before he got recruited and walked down at Clemson and got a scholarship and transferred to Southern Miss. So it'll be kind of for all the fans, the family and friends in Virginia, that'll be someone you'll want to watch on Saturday, because that is a kid who led Stonebridge to a state championship when he was there. And I believe he played with our linebacker Brian Courtney, who's on our team also from the area as well. At Stonebridge. So a little connection there for the folks in Virginia who may be watching this. So I had to make that connection there. Another guy down the ball that I'm interested about is another transfer. So another transfer impact player I think we need to watch out for. We saw a little bit of him against Alcorn State. Frank Gore didn't have a lot of work to do because it was a blowout before halftime with him only getting 6 touches. But Rodriguez Clark, he comes in as a transfer. What type of back is he in? Is it more of are they going to be splitting carries a lot more this season, trying to take some of the load off Frank Gore? Or was it just, hey, it's a blowout, let's get the guy more reps in? How do they plan on using a guy like that?
Yeah, so with Clark, he looked really good. He looked really good, really explosive, really strong against Alcorn. And he ended up getting more carries than Frank Gore Jr. did, just because he didn't have to carry the load that day. Yeah. From what I can tell, they're going to use him as just to get Frank Gore off the field, get him a breather, because the offense has been relied on him. And I'm sure, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but they have like a super back package where Frank Gore actually played quarterback for Southern Miss for a lot of snaps last year, and especially Will Hall's first year.
Interesting.
So he's been run through the ground. So what Clark will provide, he'll provide a rest for Frank Gore Jr., but he also has that explosiveness and that ability to be a 3-down back, and he will get a lot of touches. I wouldn't say that they will split the carries necessarily, just depending on the game and like the situation. But him and Kenyon Clay are definitely the other 2 backs that Southern Miss needs to look out for, because they can run and they can hit too. When you hit them, when they hit you, you fall backwards. So
you got to go low. You got to chop them.
Got to go low, exactly. So he'll get a lot of carries this year, and he's one that Will Hall's really looking to see. He came on in fall camp and looked really good. So he's a really exciting back, and yeah, they'll definitely utilize him in the run game for sure.
And old man, I have one question before I let you take over. On one stat I thought that was interesting on Saturday is that 8 people outside of quarterbacks, so including quarterbacks, it was 10, but 8 people outside of the quarterbacks got rushes. Is that a usual stat with this team? Is there a lot of end arounds? Is a lot of people they're running? Like, are they trying to go sideline to sideline with this offense? Why? Or is that just a consequence of a blowout? Once again, a lot of people are just getting touches, just testing them out. But I thought it was unusual that 8 different people had rushes within the game, not including the quarterbacks. Or is that just the style of offense?
Yeah, so that's just how Will Hall likes to play. He's more into the intermediate, short game, long game, and he'll put a little hurry up in there as well. But Southern Miss had a guy last year called his wide receiver Jason Brownlee. He just made the Jets roster last week, And he was a big vocal point of offense. And whenever the only time Southern Miss went 20-plus yards was just to throw it up to him because he was so big and he was so good. Obviously, he's made an NFL roster. So,
sure.
But yeah, definitely the intermediate game is where they thrive. And that's where Billy Wiles thrives as well because he's just so accurate, and he's proved that throughout the fall and spring camp. And then in the first game, just only 7 incompletions. So, yeah, that's just the strategy he goes for.
Got it. Old man, what do you got?
Yeah, Garrett, welcome to the program, man. It's really great having the insight that you're providing to not only us but to our fan base. I'm going to be honest with you. I think our fan base is not seeing this as a troubling game. They're not seeing this as a challenging game. But we also had Jacksonville State we didn't see as a challenging game and got thumped, on a last play, which really upset a lot of people. So I think this team that you're going to be facing this coming weekend is going to be more focused, okay? This team is locked in and loaded. And as KB and I say, this team is been put together to win this year. It's going to be disappointing if they don't win an ACC championship. Playoffs, I think could be a far-fetched, but given the win that we saw against LSU, that nothing's out of the ordinary now. But Clemson is the king in the ACC. They've been the king for a long time. FSU is hunting them, and that game's coming up. Could this be a game, you think, a trap game, where Southern Mississippi comes into the Doak and plays a close game, hangs around? Frank Gore Jr. has a big game rushing the ball. He's quick. He's small. He's tough to get your hands on. Could this be a trap game for FSU?
It could be, yes. Just to touch on FSU just for a second, I watched that game last night. Wow. They looked really good, a lot better than I thought they would look. I actually picked LSU to win a close game. But,
so did KB. He picked LSU. I did not.
I was impressed.
But yeah, they blew LSU out of the water, to be honest with you, and LSU just looked like they quit. Mm-hmm. They got hit in the mouth and they didn't know how to respond, and that's testament to FSU, and I think that defensive line as well. Yep. And to touch on Southern Miss, it's been done before. Southern Miss has a really good history of beating the big boys. They've beaten Alabama a couple times. They've beaten Florida State at Florida State a couple times in their history. So you can never say never, but a couple things have to go exactly right for that to happen. And one of those things is Frank Gore Jr. has to be able to get some holes through the offense, be able to hit the holes and get first downs for the Eagles offensively. But defensively, the Southern Miss defense is going to be the Southern Miss defense. But defensively, the defensive line has to perform almost to the level that FSU's defensive line did yesterday. They have to be able to get a push, and that's a strong side of the defense as well. Mm-hmm. So for Southern Miss to have a chance, I think, to come out with the win, the defensive line has to play well. They have to establish the line of scrimmage, and offensively, just Billy Wiles just needs to be Billy Wiles. He needs to be efficient. He doesn't need to make mistakes, do the right things, and it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a very big challenge, but it is possible. Never say never, but we can only tell when the time comes. Saturday.
One of the things, Garrett, too, you touched on this. The overall series between Southern Miss and Florida State goes way back. It goes back to 1952. That's before you were born. That's before KB was born. And actually, that was the year I was born. And in that game, when Florida State played Southern Miss, guess who won that game? Southern Miss won that game, and they won it big, okay? And, well, we were a girls' school then. That's what we used to be called, right? The girls' college of Florida. I know that stuff. That's what I bring, But overall, the overall series is Southern Miss has 8 wins and 14 losses. So, that's not bad. It's not like Southern Miss is getting blown out every time. And they also used to have a pretty good quarterback there. I think, what was his name? Brett Favre? I think a few people have heard of Brett Favre, and I think he I didn't look it up. He might even play against Florida State. I don't know if he did or he didn't.
He actually beat Florida State.
Yeah.
Florida State in Tallahassee. So
I think I remember watching that game, and it was like, who the hell is Brett Favre? who is Southern Mississippi? And one of the things I think is going to be, I have a couple of questions here, and I'm sorry if we're taking too much of your time, but
I know you're good.
Quarterback Billy Wiles and KB gave the history, which is very interesting. He walks on at Clemson, gets some good training there, wins a scholarship there, and gets in the portal, comes out. He's only how many games is he only started one game, the Alcorn game?
Yes.
So how is Coach Hall going to calm down this inexperienced quarterback, Billy Wiles, who I think has really good potential? Going into his second game, he's playing in front of 65,000, maybe 70,000 screaming Noles fans who want blood. How is he going to calm that offensive down? They're not going to be able to hear themselves. I know the coach now is blaring the loudest music he can in practice because they're not going to be able to hear anything. How are they going to handle that environment?
Right. That's a tough question because, like you said, Billy Wiles, he does have ACC experience, as we know. He transferred from Clemson, and he actually got some snaps while he was at Clemson. He never started a game, but I believe he was like 2 for 4 or something.
Yeah.
One game. So he's seen that level. He knows what it takes. He won a scholarship there, so he knows what it takes. But you're right. That's going to be a completely different atmosphere, one that he's never experienced before. Not that big, at least. But I think Will Hall, the message has to be just make the right plays, go to the right receiver. If it's not there, just don't make a mistake. Don't try and force anything. Just be accurate, like he's been doing all off season, and that's why he was picked to be the starter for Southern Miss, because of his accuracy. So he just has to rely on what he's good at and what he knows. Because as soon as the pressure gets to you, as soon as the crowd noise gets to you, that's a different ball game. So,
my thinking, Garrett, is if I'm the offensive coordinator of Southern Miss, my thinking is I'm going to have to get rid of the ball fast. And does Billy Wiles, can he get rid of the ball fast? Maybe do a couple of reads instead of 4 reads. He's going to do 2 reads and get rid of the ball quickly, because we do have a pretty good defensive line, and we've got some good edge rushers. As you know, Garrett Verse is going to be headhunting in this game. Now, I mean headhunting, he's going after the quarterback. He's going to want to eat because he really didn't have any sack totals against LSU. Okay, he got close to one. They called it an incomplete pass, but he didn't get credit for it. He had pressures. So he's going to want to get some numbers in this game against that quarterback. I hope Billy Wiles gets rid of that ball quickly, or he's going to have potentially a long night. Do you agree or disagree?
Oh, I agree. Yes, he's going to have to make just a couple reads because, like you said, Florida State has one of the best defensive lines in the country, especially in Garrett Verse. And so, yeah, he's definitely going to have to make some quick reads. And Frank Gore Jr. is going to also have to take the load off of him a little bit. He's going to have to gain a couple yards, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 yards consistently to be able to take that pressure off of Billy Wiles.
Do you feel your offensive line is up for this matchup? Do they have the ability? Because KB and I have even raked our own offensive line, that they've had some problems. We were just looking at some numbers. A couple of guys got benched out of the LSU game and had they were struggling. How is that offensive line? What do you know about them, and how do you think they're going to perform?
Yeah, so the offensive line, I believe it's the biggest offensive line just by weight and size that Will Hall has had since he's been at Southern Miss. So they have the size to do it. But the question is, can they do it, like you asked? They're a group of veteran guys. They know each other. That's been a tough battle throughout that line, throughout the spring and fall camps. They looked solid against Alcorn State. I wouldn't say they looked spectacular. Alcorn State does have one of the top, if not the best, defensive lines in the SWAC. So they had good competition last week. I'd say they won that battle still anyways, but maybe didn't impress as much as what people thought they would. So that's going to be an interesting thing to see how that offensive line holds up. And I think what we'll see is we'll see a couple quick reads from Billy Wiles like we went at a second ago. He'll have to get the ball out fast just to see how this line will hold up against these, this Florida State defensive line. So that's going to be the interesting factor, I think, for Southern Miss to have a chance not only to score but to win. They're going that offensive line has to be able to hold Billy Wiles up.
I've got a couple more questions, KB, and I'll turn it back over to you. And Garrett, we want to give you an opportunity to ask us questions too. What you on Florida State side? Dan O'Brien, son of Tom O'Brien, former longtime head coach of Boston College and a well-known name around college football. Dan O'Brien's going to have the challenge of his career. Okay, yeah. I'm just going to be blunt about it. Okay. This Florida State offense is loaded, okay? And that was apparent the other night against LSU. Yep. They're loaded. And I understand, and I've watched some film and I've watched some stuff on Southern Miss. There is some inexperience again at the cornerback, the secondary level. How do you think he is going to be able to handle the spread out wide receivers, the Keon Colemans, the Johnny Wilsons, the Jerome Bell? There's a wide variety of very, very big receivers in this unit. How do you think that's going to be handled? And do you think it can be handled?
Yeah, so that's another tough question as well because Florida State dominated the LSU DBs, and they're known as DBU to America. And so that was
Florida City fans would disagree on that. So,
yeah. Go ahead, Jared.
But so Jay Stanley, the free safety back there for Southern Miss, he'll have to get the reads right. He'll have to have a massive game. He had 2 interceptions against Alcorn State, and I think maybe the inexperience of the defensive backs for Southern Miss is just a little bit overblown by the media. I think because they have some really talented guys. They have some guys coming from Ole Miss that have transferred. They have some guys from State, I believe, that have transferred there. And so they have the talent to do it. But the secondary is not going to be able to hold up if the defensive line is not getting pressure. And so that's what it all boils down to me. And Dan O'Brien likes to get pressure at the quarterback.
Does he blitz? Does he like the blitz?
He does like to blitz, but it's mainly just he never really goes more than 5 guys. Okay. But last week was his first game as a defensive coordinator, okay. So he didn't really have. They played Alcorn, and all respect to Alcorn, but they didn't really have to blitz too much to get pressure on their quarterback. But the defensive line will have to get pressure on Jordan Travis that whole game or the majority of the game. And we saw a little bit, I think, last night against LSU. He at first he had troubles dealing with the blitz, dealing with the pressure in his face. He gave up he threw a kind of a interception, big mistake, I believe.
He almost had 2. Yeah,
he almost had 2. Yeah, so
he was doing a Brett Favre move, Brett either threw 5 touchdowns or 5 interceptions.
Yeah.
Hall of Famer though.
So they'll have to get a hand in his face, and we'll see. He ended up dealing with the pressure well in the second half last game. He looks like a Heisman candidate in that second half. He looked really, really good dealing with that defensive line of LSU, but. We have seen flashes because of that pressure. Sometimes he will stumble a little bit. So that's going to be the game plan, I believe, for Dan O'Brien. Get hands in his face because no quarterback wants to, end up on their back. They don't want pressure. They want to sit in the pocket. They want to have all the time in the world to throw. So, but yeah, I think Dan O'Brien will be encouraged from what he's just a couple plays that he saw from Jordan Travis, having pressure in his face, having a hand in his face. That can cause problems because he did make a mistake last night. Granted, he did make up for it, but I think that would be.
I think you're gonna see the run game come at you pretty heavy and pretty quick. I think Coach Norvell and staff were upset that they couldn't get that run game going in the first half. They did get it cranked up, and Trey Benson got cranked up in the second half. We were able to push it over 100 yards and. Coach Kelly in his post game said they didn't handle the 2 back counter plays a lot. So you're definitely going to see some run game which will hopefully for Florida State fans open up the pass game over the top. Right. So you're really Dan O'Brien and Southern Miss are really going to face a bloodthirsty giant in Tallahassee on Saturday night. So I think it's going to be. I think if the Seminoles play right and they play hard, they're going to win this game. And I don't mean any disrespect to Southern Miss, but Southern Miss is a team that could come in and can hang around. If you allow them to hang around, Frank Gore can bust one up the middle, and you've got a problem. Yeah. So I think it's going to be an interesting game because there will be an emotional letdown for Florida State in this game. It's natural. It's built in, despite what the coaches try to do. But I think it's going to be very interesting. And also there's going to be Southern Miss is going to learn a lot about their team as well.
Yeah. Right, exactly. And Coach Hall has talked about this is undoubtedly his most talented roster that he's had since he's been at the program. And I believe it was his first year. I talked to him today. He was saying they went to Alabama and they just got ran over. There was nothing they could do. They were just there to survive, really. But we talked today, and he was saying that this is going to be a good test of where the program's actually at, where the team actually is at talent wise. My opinion, I think they're still a year or two away from being able to take down the likes of Florida State, the likes of Alabama, or whoever you name them. But
yeah, and this is what you said too. And I listened to your interview today, which was great, and asking that question. And like you said, I think Alabama hung 62 points on Southern Miss in his first year, but they ran back at it again and that's one of those reasons why a guy like Frank Gore Jr. stays, because he wants to play against great teams, and he'll be under the lights in Tallahassee, and he'll get to show what he has with this talent that they built around him. So, like you said, it will be a measurement of how far the team has come in 2 years. From 3 wins to 7 wins to what can we do this year against Florida State? I think it'll be an interesting matchup.
And you got some other challenging games on the schedule as well. I mean, App State, they're the giant killer. You've got to play them. You've got to play Mississippi State too. You're one of your rivals, and
Tulane.
And you've got one of the tougher schedules out there. And I think it's going to be a fascinating year. For you guys now. The quote experts have predicted you're going to finish, I think, 4th in the West. How do you feel about that? Do you think that's accurate or not?
I think it's accurate just because of the tough schedule that Southern Miss has to play, and it's done on purpose. They want to compete. Southern Miss wants to compete, and like I talked about with Coach Hall earlier, they have that history of competing and beating teams that maybe the media or whoever view as higher, more powerful than them. And like KB touched on with Frank Gore Jr. playing at Southern Miss, you have the chance to play against Florida State. You have the chance to play Alabama. They will schedule those games every year or every other year. They actually play Ohio State at Ohio State next season. That's already written down in pen and paper. One thing about Frank Gore Jr. I want to touch on before we move on is that a thing they like to say here in Hattiesburg is, if you love Southern Miss loves you back. And I think that's one of the big reasons he stayed, not only because, like you just touched on, to being able to play Florida State, being able to play all the big guys, but Southern Miss loves you back if you love them. And so there's a real culture, there's a real grit and grind culture down here that is stuck with the program, regardless of the head coach that is in. And you get to experience that when you play the big teams, when you play bigger teams that are supposedly better than you are. And on the schedule, I think that's a fair judgment, just because we don't know what Southern Miss is capable of this season with all the transfers. They do have the most talented roster that they've had since Will Hall's been here in his 3 years. But like you said, they have to play Mississippi State away. They're about to play Florida State away. They play Tulane in a couple weeks. So at home, and then the Sun Belt, the Sun Belt isn't a pushover either. They have to play App State, so it's a tough schedule, and it's arguably the toughest Group of 5 conference schedule in the country. And but Southern Miss doesn't shy away from that. And that's one thing that fans love about that, and the Southern Miss faithful love about that.
Let me ask you this, Garrett, too, on Frank Gore Jr. Again, we've talked a lot about him because he's one of the highlights of this team.
Exactly.
Is Jackson, Mississippi had another team, Jackson State, right, with Coach Prime. Was there any indication that Coach Prime was trying to get Frank Gore Jr. out of there into the portal? Any indication of that at all?
Not that I was aware of. I never was told anything or heard anything about that. And Coach Prime, he has a really good relationship with Savion Wilkerson, who was there last year. And now he's in Colorado with Coach Prime, among other multiple former JSU players. So I don't think that was ever, I guess, a worry for Southern Miss. I don't know who the teams were that tampered with him illegally, supposedly, but I have heard that it has happened, and with a couple of players at Southern Miss. But yeah, I don't think that was ever a question.
Well, why we have that topic, because I know you do cover Jackson State a bit, and they just got their first loss of the season to FAMU, which is Tallahassee program. So it was a great weekend for Tallahassee, and everyone was celebrating there. What has been the atmosphere like with the loss of personality and a coach like Coach Prime, and how is things stabilized with the loss of that, a coach like that with the program, and what are expectations now?
Of course, the expectations with JSU have always stayed the same. They're always going to compete for the SWAC. They want to win their first Celebration Bowl, which is a HBCU national championship. They were unable to do that under Coach Prime, but things stay the same at JSU. You know, they want to win. They want to win every game. They want to win the SWAC. And so that's just the expectations there. And I think with Coach Prime leaving, there was a bit of bitterness, but there's also a bit of relief, I feel, just to get back to football and football only.
Sure.
And that's what head coach TC Taylor has provided. I don't know if y'all are aware, but that is his alma mater. He played at Jackson State. So this is his home. This is his program. He's not looking to move up, I don't think. This is where he wants to be. He wants to be in Jackson. And so it's strictly football now, and a lot of fans like that as of right now. When your team loses, you never like that. And so when it's just football, it's like, oh, man. They got hit in the mouth. They did get hit in the mouth this weekend, and it was unexpected by me. I thought it was going to be a close game, but I didn't think it was going to be like that.
FAMU's always a good program, but that was
But FAMU's had their problems too. They had some problems this year.
The suspensions.
They had to shut the program down for a while, and
But they have a good coach. Willie Simmons is a good coach.
Yeah, he is a fantastic coach, and he's done well over there. And they're actually the favorite to win the SWAC this season. Yeah. So, Jackson State, they're going to keep being Jackson State. That's what they do.
Absolutely.
And so, like with Coach Prime leaving, obviously a lot of players left, but they also brought in a lot of high caliber players in the program as well. Seven McGee, he hasn't taken a snap yet. He's a wide receiver transfer from Oregon.
Okay.
He's been injured, so he hadn't played at all. But
at least that notoriety put Jackson State back kind of on the map for maybe a national crowd and players like that to bring them in.
Were you surprised, Garrett, by the weekend score Colorado put up with TCU?
Yes, I was a little surprised. I didn't think they were going to get blown out, but I thought it was going to be, a TCU maybe 28-30 to 17 win, some comfortable win. I wouldn't say blowout, but they were impressive. They definitely took me by surprise by winning for sure. And Coach Prime, he has a point to prove. He really does as a coach. So I'm sure y'all saw he enjoyed that victory, and as he should as well.
Well, KB and I have gone back and forth about his style of coaching and his wide open media and how he does stuff. And, KB and I often argue about it. And I was pleased to see the result. Now, I'm not only a graduate of Florida State, but when I was at Florida State, 1973, we were 0-11, and they almost shut the program down. This was prior to Bobby Bowden coming in and resurrecting it. But that, we often talked about that, and I'm also a graduate of University of Colorado from graduate school. But yeah, I'm pleased. There's a lot of haters out there, even from Florida State, on Coach Prime and the way he does his business and what he says and the controversy. But he plays the media a lot, and he says, he tends to be candid about this, what is going on in college football. You know what I mean? So it's interesting that you were right there in the Jackson community with this personality and could see this whole thing take place. So I think that's very interesting for our fans to know.
Yeah, and he was very good at being open with the media. He's very good at it. Coach Prime is Coach Prime, and that's why we like him. So he's himself.
Exactly. So one last question for me, and then I'll turn it to KB. One last question. Garrett, tomorrow I'm headed out to Las Vegas. Where should I put my money? Where should I put my money on that board? And Caesar's there. They got the boards up, and I'm going to put some money down. And what do they have, the over and the under? I don't even know what it is. What is the KB?
I believe the over-under is 28. So I think
where do I put my money, Garrett?
Well, I've actually had to change my opinion just because of what Florida State did last night. I'm still thinking about that as we speak now, what I think the score prediction will be. But you always got to go safe, right? You always got to go safe. So.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good answer. I like that answer. Okay, that's great.
No, I think that's great. And I was just going to ask you if you had a prediction for this weekend. I don't know if you're allowed to with media. If you don't want to give that, that's fine. So I don't want to ask you that. But I think you brought up a lot of great points, and I think for all FSU fans watching this, and the points you brought up is that this isn't some young team that's undersized. Both sides of the ball have average of 310 plus pounds, defensive line, offensive line. So Florida State can't have a rough week. They can't have a down week because especially early on. Frank Gore, Billy, those guys are going to be able to have the capability of putting points up like they did last week if we give them the chance to. So I think you brought up a lot of great points, and I think the only opportunity, the biggest opportunity that might contest is those transfers in the defensive backfield, because that's the thing that stood out to me is that there is some new faces in that defensive backfield now coming from big programs like Ole Miss and Mississippi State. They should have some pedigree, but I think they may try to test those guys out early and then try to reestablish the run game if they get up early. So I think it'll be a fun matchup, though. I can't wait to see Frank Gore and see this the hometown kid Billy from my hometown and see what they do. And I think it should be a fun matchup. But I'll turn it over to you. Anything else, Garrett, that you have questions for us or anything that you want to bring up before we let you go and enjoy your evening?
Yeah, I just want to know what y'all think about what y'all think the score prediction is and what y'all expect to see from Florida State, given that that not monumental victory, but it was a really good victory for the program. And I believe I saw a stat that they haven't beat a top 10 program since 2005 or something like that. So it is huge. It is a very big win. And I guess I have a question for y'all. Do you think there's going to be a hangover that allows Southern Miss to stay in the game maybe until halftime, and then things get, itchy and circumstances like that?
For me personally, I do think that there will be some hangover. Being a night game, I think that may help a little bit. It's not like a noon kickoff, or nobody loves playing those noon kickoffs. Going from a Sunday game to a Saturday noon kickoff. I think playing at night, there'll be a packed crowd. Student tickets have already been gobbled up pretty quickly. So I think the energy will be there, and that will energize the players. So I think that'll knock off some of the effects of that. But to your point, I do think that potentially things may start slow. And starting slow against a caliber of team like Southern Mississippi, they could keep it close, especially in the first half. But I think Florida State with the adjustments then will be able to pull away come the second half. And you saw those adjustments against LSU. The way they made changes on the offensive line, things got fixed up. We may even see some of those changes kind of bleed over into this game, where you may see changes to the offensive line, the depth chart going into this week. So you may not see some of those mistakes going into this week. So I think the 28-point spread is right around where I believe it should be. I'd see the Florida State winning by that margin, but I do think that Southern Miss will be able to keep this open, or keep this a game early if Florida State does come out slow, or have an early turnover, comes out 3 and out to start it, because Southern Miss does have the talent offensively, especially to put some points on the board if you give them the opportunity.
I think Garrett, to your question, I think Florida State's going to win big. I think I'll take the over 28. I think it's going to be more than that. I think the score is probably going to be around between 48 and 55 to to 10 or potentially 18. You know what the average points are for Southern Miss in this whole series? It's 18 points. That's what they average for the entire series against Florida State. I think it's going to be in that range. I think it'll be a 55-18 game, something of that nature. And this is no disrespect to Southern Mississippi. Yeah. This Florida State team is loaded. And I think if they don't perform up to that standard, there's going to be questions. There's going to be questions from a lot of fans. There'll be a lot of questions. So I think, as KB said, if it was a noon game, I think that's a little bit different game. Players hate that, fans hate that, but under the lights, it's going to be very, very energized. And I think Southern Miss could get off to a quick start, maybe even score the first touchdown of the game. A Frank Gore run up the middle. This guy is quick, and he can score. He can go all the way and burst it. We saw that big chunk plays that LSU put up in their game. So, but I don't think it's going to be a close game. I'll eat crow if it is a close game. But if it comes down to a kick. Now, I think Southern Miss, they have a kicker that had 4 field goals, right?
Well, last week, you mean?
Last week.
Yeah.
Didn't he kick 4 field goals?
He did, yeah.
Now, if he were to get injured or something, do you have eligibility? Because you used to kick a ball around, didn't you, in college?
Yeah.
Soccer? Didn't you play a soccer ball? Yeah, at Bellhaven there. So are you eligible? Are you eligible?
I do. I have my COVID year. I never
all right. COVID year. Now I'm concerned about a kicking battle with our kicker because KB and I have less confidence if it comes down to that. But I wanted to get that in there. Garrett played some soccer there at Bellhaven, and so he may see him out there. Who knows? But I think Florida State is going to win this game, and they're going to win it handily. No disrespect to Southern Miss, who has a really good and proud program.
Well, if Florida State wants to be for real, they have to blow out. No offense to Southern Miss, they have to blow them out.
But I don't think Mike Norvell is a guy who runs up a score.
Yes, I think he's on a mission this year.
I don't think so.
He kept running it down last week. He's on a mission to make statements. He's not going to put out Tate Rodemaker in the third quarter.
I disagree. I think if he gets a spread that he's comfortable with, he will put Tate Rodemaker in because KB and I have discussed this, Garrett. We are inexperienced after Travis. If he goes down, the whole game changes. And if Southern Miss, if Jordan Travis goes down, this whole game could change, despite the weapons. I'm just putting it out there. I mean, it's reality. This is what KB and I do a lot. But that could change the game. Weather could change the game. I don't think there's going to be any weather issues. But yes, I think that you never know in football, right? You never know.
Right. Yeah. And I agree with you. I think Florida State will win. I think, to y'all's point, I think they have to blow out Southern Miss if they want to be have that playoff contender, face value for themselves.
But I don't think Coach Norvell runs it up intentionally. I don't think he will. If he runs the ball, we score touchdowns. There's nothing you can do about that. But I don't see him throwing the ball if he's got a big lead. That's what I'm telling KB. Yeah, I don't see him doing that. But handing off and running the ball hard, they would continue to do that. And if they score touchdowns, there's nothing else you can do about that,
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, so I tend to agree with KB more on the fact that I think they can be competitive. I think they can hold it close to halftime. But like you mentioned, I think, Florida State, they just have too much talent. And, they should be if they aren't a top 4 team in the country.
I liked you, Garrett, until you agreed with KB. I guess why?
I got to stick up for Southern Miss here. But I think the score prediction, it was, before I watched them last night, it was going to be 31-20, but I think it's going to be closer to like 41, 48-20 maybe. So that's what I think. But I think Southern Miss, they have the talent to hold it close until halftime, but I just think they'll get tired, and they don't. Obviously, Florida State has more talent on paper, more depth as well. So, but it's going to be a big test for the program, and of course, Coach Hall is going to be buzzing for it. The players are going to be up for it because they're going to Florida State. They want to be Florida State in their house. So it's going to be an interesting game. It will be. But I think,
let me say this about Coach Hall. I think he's very impressive. I've been watching some film and video on him. He's a very energized guy, high energy guy. He really is enthusiastic, and I like that type of coaching. And he's a really direct guy. I watched his post game after the Alcorn, and he's really direct in everything. And I think players like that. So I have great respect for Coach Will Hall and his staff and this entire team. And best of luck to them in this game and to the rest of the season.
Absolutely. No injuries. That's what I pray for.
Best of luck to y'all as well. I think Florida State can do it this year. So, but we'll see against Southern Miss. They have to blow them out. I think they have to compete really well and not get hung over from the victory.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Garrett, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks so much for the insight on Southern Miss. Well, like you said, hopefully it's a good game. Hopefully FSU does its job, but you never know. And we'll see you on Saturday. And if you don't have anything else to do, we'll be doing our post-game reaction show on Saturday. So feel free to stop
Awesome.
by.
Yeah, just let me know. And thank y'all for having me on. I really appreciate that. And I had a good time talking to y'all and just learning more about Florida State as well. So
awesome. Thanks, Garrett.
Awesome.
Have a great rest of your week, and we'll hopefully have a good game Saturday. Take care.
Thank y'all as well. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Well, that was Garrett Busby. You can see all his information below. Once again, digital reporter for WLBT, covering USM and JSU. GS Busby on X, Twitter, whatever you guys want to call it. But follow him for the latest information going into game day and afterwards. Win or lose, hopefully win for Florida State, obviously. But great information there. And I think the big points out of that, talking to him, was that this isn't some undersized, FCS school. This is some undersized kind of non-Power 5 school. You look at their defensive line, offensive line especially, I think they average over 325, 330-ish on their starters, offensive line. They're 6'2", 6'3", and above. Outside of, I think, one of their offensive tackles, who's the true sophomore, who's the youngest on their line, he's the smallest guy on that line. I think it may be the right side of their line. But outside of that, they have a big line, and they haven't been truly tested this season, but they'll be tested on Saturday, and so Florida State we'll test them. I'm assuming we'll blitz them as well, like we did LSU. We'll show them pressure, and if they can stand up, they're going to give this Clemson transfer the time to throw, or give Frank Gore Jr. some holes to run through. So I expect them to try to establish a quick passing game and try to get out of Billy's hands quickly. And then because Frank Gore Jr. too can catch the ball. So I think they're going to try to get him in open space and try to expose some of those things that LSU showed on tape at Florida State, where guys were getting lost in coverage a couple of times. So I think they will try to expose some of those things that LSU showed. Hopefully Florida State will clean it up by Saturday. Well,
I'd be shocked if Florida State has to blitz that much. Their front four should take care of this situation.
You're right.
Okay. I'd be floored. I mean, it would say that our defensive line is not that good to take down. Now, I don't care how big, and this is not disrespect to any team. I don't care how big players are. That doesn't mean they can play. Size doesn't mean a guy can play. Okay. What it means is he's big, but you have to have skills along with that. And this is no disrespect to them again. However, our defensive line with the rotations, we're basically doing an 8-player rotation as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
That is going to wear them down once you get into the second quarter and beyond. And the heat and the humidity are still going to be there. They practice in it too. They're in Mississippi. They understand that. So it's not like Minnesota, Wisconsin. But I don't think we'll blitz that much. We may on some third downs and so on, but I don't expect that. And I'm really more interested in how our offensive line performs and can we get that run game going. To me, this should be a 200-yard plus run game. That's what it should be.
I think it will in the second half. I do think that they'll early just try to expose these new transfers for Southern Miss defensively and the defensive backs, like I mentioned. And they'll tee off with Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson. They'll get some big plays, score.
We're going to throw the ball.
They'll try to get up early, 14-21. And like you said, establish the run game and get Hill going, get Benson going, get some of Keziah, get that rotation of running backs going, and then just try to cruise from there. So I do think they'll try to expose the defensive backs early. Hopefully, Jordan Travis gets places on the money. and then they just screw. So that's how it should go. The play and defense does its job, and
you've got basically an inexperienced quarterback for Southern Miss. He may have, I think he has decent potential, but he just doesn't have the experience, and he's coming in to the biggest game of his life.
Absolutely. He's a big kid. I think he's 6'2", 6'3". He's got the size for it, and that's why Clemson, had him come on as a walk-on and earn that scholarship. But like you said, he's played in one game at Clemson he had 4 snaps versus UConn, 2021. And then he goes
Alcorn
to
State.
Yeah, and then he comes over and plays for
So Jared Verse is going to be licking his chops, and his goal is probably 2.5 sacks, maybe 3, coming into a game. I mean, you set goals, and he sees this as that. I'd be shocked if he doesn't get there, unless he's getting that ball out so damn quick that you can't get there.
No, this should be a cleanup game for him. Absolutely. One thing that's interesting, though, is that I think Mike Norvell actually recruited the transfer running back for Ole Miss, this Rodriguez Clark, because he enrolled at Memphis in 2019 and was recruited in 2018. So I think this is a kid that Mike Norvell actually recruited to Memphis, if I got my years correct, and now he's at Southern Miss, and he'll be in that tandem with Frank Gore Jr. So I think that's kind of interesting. So that's a guy to look out for in the backfield for them. So my final prediction, like we talked about, scoreline 28 points plus. I'm not going to give a final, but I think it should be 28 points plus. And you said the same, right?
I agree. I think it'll be much more than that. So
perfect. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up from there. So this is once again, join us, at least myself, post-game reaction show on Saturday. We'll just do a quick breakdown. Hopefully it's a quick win, and we get out, do a little post-game reaction, and we wrap up the weekend. But let us know in the comments what you believe the final score will be. So comment below. Let us know what you think the prediction for this weekend's matchup will be, and we'll see who gets it right. Once again, always go Noles. Like the video, share the video, and we'll see you soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.